Imagine sitting at your desk in class, tapping your pencil, squirming in your seat, wiggling your toes, looking around, listening halfway to the teacher and the other half is listening to a bird chirping outside the window. Unlike the rest of the class, you just can't seem to sit still and focus on one thing. Sound exhausting yet? A child with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD, experiences this on a daily basis. Based on my research, I have found that many children have ADHD. You may be wondering why I chose this as my topic. My reasoning is simple. My husband Daniel has this disorder. He was diagnosed as a child and still shows signs in his behavior today. I asked Daniel what it was like growing up with ADHD, and this was his reply. Growing up with ADHD was hard, not only for me, but also for the people around me. To myself, I was a normal child. My behavior didn't seem out of the ordinary to me. I think that was the hardest part, finding out that I wasn't like the other kids, that I was different. After hearing my speech, you will have a better understanding of ADHD and how it affects children's ability to communicate with others. We will start off by talking about the statistics of ADHD. Following that, we'll talk about the symptoms of ADHD. And lastly, I will tell you how to adapt a communication style with children who have ADHD. In a recent study by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, researchers found that 1 in 10 school-age children had been diagnosed with ADHD, and that the numbers of families in the U.S. continue to rise. The following points will explain the statistics of ADHD. ADHD has a strong genetic component. Joseph Bitterman, a doctor at the Massachusetts General Hospital, found that over 25% of children whose parents had ADHD also developed this disorder. Though genetics are the most common cause of ADHD, they are not the only factor. Other causes can include smoking and drinking during pregnancy, having a baby with a low birth rate, or a child suffering from a head injury. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention uses national surveys that ask parents about their child's health to monitor the number of children with ADHD. According to a 2011 Parents Report, Tennessee has one of the highest percentages of kids ages 4 to 17 diagnosed with ADHD. Why is this? Some believe that doctors are overdiagnosing this disorder. Others believe these high percentages indicate a greater awareness of ADHD. It's hard to know which of these statements are true since there is no single test for ADHD. Moving on from ADHD statistics, let's talk about the most common symptoms of ADHD. According to the American Speech, Language and Hearing Association, there are 3 common symptoms of ADHD. This includes inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. The following posters I will show you explain the effects of all 3 of these symptoms. The first is inattention. Effects of this include daydreaming, getting bored easily, being forgetful, easily distracted, struggles to finish tasks, and have trouble following directions. The second symptom of ADHD is hyperactivity. Children with hyperactivity often talk and move around nonstop, fidget constantly, and has to touch everything within their reach. The third symptom of ADHD is impulsivity. Children with impulsivity often are impatient, interruptive, overreacts, and has trouble waiting for his or her turn. Now that you know the statistics and the symptoms of ADHD, I will now tell you how to adapt a communication style with children who have ADHD. It is important that we all learn how to communicate effectively with children who have ADHD. The following 6 tips will show you how. Tip number 1 is to say less. The less you say, the more likely a child is to listen and remember. Tip number 2 is to get the child's attention before you speak. Be sure they are keeping constant eye contact with you. If they aren't looking, they more than likely aren't listening. Tip number 3 is to remove distractions before you speak. Be sure the child is focused on you and not on someone else. Tip number 4 is to give instructions one at a time. Children with ADHD can only handle one task at a time. Tip number 5 is to have the child repeat back to you what they say. This will ensure they not only heard you talking, but listened to what you said. The last tip is to repeat yourself back to the child. It often takes repetition for an ADHD child to remember. This concludes my speech on ADHD. I hope you now understand the statistics, the symptoms, and how to adapt a communication style with children who have ADHD. Just remember, ADHD children are consistently inconsistent. That is what makes it so difficult for them to communicate with others.